For those that haven't been here for a while or those who have never been here or whatever your thing is, I want to let you know that we've been doing kind of a little bit of a series. I'm not normally a series guy. I might take a book and do a book forever and a day, but we've been kind of doing a little bit of a series. We've been doing loving God wildly, okay? We want to love God wildly. Why do we want to love God wildly? Because we want the world to know that we actually love our God and we're not just a bunch of stiffs sitting in a church going, yay. Okay? We should be about trying to outthank our God. Can you imagine trying to do that? Just sit for a night and try to outthank him. You can't do it. And so if we can't do it, we should at least be overflowing with thanksgiving for God. And if we can't be once we're overflowing with thanksgiving, you know what happens after you thank somebody for something? You praise them for it. I want you guys to know, I thank Kevin for coming up here and doing the communion and offering because it is not a place that he is always comfortable. But he did a really good job today, and I'm really thankful and really proud of the fact that he did. I'm really proud for God for the fact that Kevin came up here and did this because he shared something with you that made him uncomfortable. Kevin, congratulations. Thanks and praise all in the same breath. You see, when we love God wildly, you guys should know that how I feel about God the same as what you know how I feel about Kevin. I love God more. Sorry, man. But I love God more because God should be my everything. In my life, every step that I take, everything that I do should be about walking with God. And we hear about that, but I'm not sure we actually understand it. So today I have a question for you real quick at the beginning. And for some of you, you're going to be like, yeah. And for some of you, you're going to be like, not yet. But we're going to start here and see if we can broaden it out a little bit for you. Do you remember what it's like to learn to live with someone else for the first time? I want you to know I'm not talking about your mom and dad, your brothers and sisters. I remember living with my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters, and thinking I was living with somebody else. I wasn't. I was living under somebody else. Our parents kind of kept us in line. That's how it worked, and I'm okay with that. With them, it wasn't a back and forth about living together, but a series of protected failures. In case you were wondering, I did that a lot, and therefore needed a lot of protection from my parents while I was growing up. I learned to be an adult. I prepared to share my life with somebody else by living in my parents' house. So when I say living with someone else, I'm not talking about living in their house. I'm talking about, do you remember what it's like to learn to share your life with somebody else? To really open up to it. To let it be a part of you and them be a part of you. You see, I didn't get married till a little bit later, and in the earlier parts of my 20s, well, it was pretty simple. It was all about me. I went where I wanted. I went when I wanted. I ate what I wanted. I did what I wanted. I stopped when I wanted. I kept going when I wanted. There was nothing in my life to offset that equation than me. I didn't know what it was like to live with somebody else because the only person I had to worry about was me. I didn't have that connection that I had to think about the other person. Now, I'm confessing this, I guess, as well, because I should have been with God at that time. I've been walking with him that way, but it didn't happen. For some reason, as well churched and schooled as I was, it never clicked in my head to love God as wildly as I did myself. Then something really scary happened. It rocked the world in my sphere. I got married. Men, do you feel me? Nothing prepares you for it. Nothing gets you ready for getting married and living life. Denise, you can tell him he was prepared, but he wasn't prepared. I'm telling you right now. Anyway, nothing prepares you really for it, for that idea of getting married and living with it. I asked her to marry me, and we took the whole 3-4 months to get married between engagement and getting married. I don't know, our anniversary's in the spring. Shh, she's not watching the live stream. But here's the thing. When I asked her to marry me, I sat down and started thinking, what's it going to be like to live with her? And I realized there were two different ways that I could live with this woman. One of them would be learning all the things that she thought was the right thing for a husband to do. I could try and learn everything about this woman and learn what she thinks a husband is to be, learn to think about what she thinks a husband should do, learn to think about how she thinks what jobs she thinks a husband should have. I could sit there, I could learn all that, and I could start trying to notch out a system that met all those needs and all those ideas, but still left me open to be me at the end of it. You see, if I can do everything she wants and still be me, woo, that's an exciting day. I can go through and I can start to look at all this. I would not have to even stretch to change. I could just be who I had always been, just doing things that she liked. I mean, you could, but you'll fail. There is an alternative. I'm not saying that the alternative is harder when I bring this to you. That's not what I'm saying. Nor am I saying it's easier. I'm saying it's radically different. It involves more. It involves more of me putting her first to see that I am living a life that honors her as my wife. That doesn't leave a lot of room for me. It requires more of me submitting my behaviors and plans to her desires so that we move through life together rather than tangentially due to a checklist of works and legal documents that keep us together. There's even more than that. The alternative also has more of her being the thing I think about when deciding where life is taking us. And I think about her more than if I can fit the obligation of marriage into my newest plan. Guys, I chose more. I didn't choose easier. I didn't choose harder. I just chose more. I wanted more with my wife than to just be obligated to live with her and know all her likes and dislikes so I could check them off the right way. I wanted more from my wife than just to live in the same house with her and go, hey, you good over there? Yeah, okay, and have that be our life. I wanted more from my wife than just a piece of paper that said we were married so we could file jointly at the end of the year. I wanted more for my marriage, and God is that more. Because the way I treat her is the way I can love God wildly. I am fortunate. I am truly wildly fortunate that I am able to say that I not only love my wife with my life. I think I'm backward to those, so hang on for a minute. I love my life with my wife. Yeah, that's the right way. So if you hear, tell her I love her, okay? We're going to make sure we tell her that, okay? But I love my life with my wife. That is important because she is my more. Oh, guys. I could say that we are walking through life together in step and united, and that would be true. We are not separated. We are not two individual entities who are composed together through a legal document. We are a bound couple. We walk together side by side in more. And because I am bound to her, there is in no way less in my life. Our series on loving God wildly, the end goal is to live with God in a relationship that is more. That's the end goal. That's what we're after. That's what should excite you right now as I'm saying this. And you're sitting there looking at me going, do you have any idea what he's talking about? I desire that when we complete this, you would want to live in a relationship with God that is more than what you have right now, is more than what you can even imagine, and is more than you can figure out for him to give you, because he will give you more than you can even think about or comprehend or fathom. When we love him wildly, we walk faithfully in life with him, rather than running down a checklist of things that we have to do to keep our side of the covenant. It's not about the law. It's not about the works we do. It's not about the things we do. It's about walking side by side with him in more. I was reminded of Enoch when I was writing this up. Genesis 5:21 through 24. It's the first place we kind of see him, and it gives us an overview of his life. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more, because God took him away. You see, I always read this, and I wonder what happened to Enoch. Genesis doesn't fill all the gaps for us in this story. I do notice that Enoch's story is different than most, that he walked faithfully with God. When they're going down through the lineages, that is not a phrase that pops up often. And in him, it pops up and says he walked faithfully with God. His life was different because of who he walked with and how he walked in that life. Because if you look further into Enoch, we see that he is mentioned in Hebrews, and we glean a few more interesting things. Hebrews 11:5 through 6. It says, by faith Enoch was taken from this life, so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. He was commended as one who pleased God. That would be the best epitaph I could have on my tombstone. If I die right now, if you put on my tombstone that I pleased God, I'd be okay. I don't need good and faithful servant. I don't even need people to know that I was a Christian. Just that I pleased God. And that would say everything I needed to say. You see, we see in Genesis that Enoch walked faithfully, and that Hebrews echoes that statement, but it expands on it to define faith. And it's truth with more fullness in that faith. Faith isn't knowledge. I want you guys to know that. I'm about to say something that's going to kind of probably mess with your heads a little bit. Shocker, I know. Faith isn't knowledge. Faith is knowing. Did you hear that? Faith is not knowledge. Faith is knowing. I'm going to give you some knowledge right now. Get ready. It's going to take a few minutes, but I hope you'll appreciate it when it's finished. Now, I need to tell you this. If stuff moving kind of fast on a screen kind of gives you a little bit of a queasy tummy or something, be ready. Okay? But I'm going to give you guys some knowledge right now. It's going to take about 2.5 minutes, so get ready. Are you ready? Rachel, give them some knowledge. Congratulations. You now have knowledge of the Gemini roller coaster at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. You have theoretically, virtually ridden the Gemini. So you have knowledge of it. You can tell there's some dips. You can tell there's some turns. You can tell there's some spots where it swings wild. You can tell all these different things. But let me ask you something. And I guarantee you, none of you know that roller coaster like I know that roller coaster. I know that roller coaster. The thrill of being in the front seat as it finally gets to the top of the hill and is about to drop you over, or when you go in the front seat and you're the first one that goes under and it looks like your head's about to be chopped off by those girders going underneath there twice. You have the thrill that it whips your neck around in the last car as it flies over that first hill and drops down to the ground. The scream and challenge of wanting to win the race, because normally they run the Gemini with 2 cars. So you have one car right next to you going the same time, and it's a race, and the blue's going to win or the red's going to win. You don't know which one's going to win, but you're screaming for your car to win. And you keep your arms up the whole time. I know what it is to keep my arms up the whole time. I know what it is to keep my hands down the whole time. I know what it's like to hit that last little part and feel the centrifugal force squeeze me into my seat on that last little whip before you come to a jarring stop right there at the station. I know what the station looks like in my head. I can still smell the gear oil mixed with the wood smell and the amusement park odors. They waft up as you get off the ride. And you know what you do? You don't go, oh, that was a great ride. You get off it and you run as hard as you can around the outside of the thing to get back in line so you can ride it again for 3 minutes and wait half an hour. I know what the line looks like. I know I've ridden that ride probably 200 times in my life. I know that roller coaster. You guys have a knowledge of it. My goal would be for us to love God wildly. And when we begin to love him wildly, we give up the false appearances of a perfectly groomed servant that is following every rule to the letter, who prays constantly for every detail while reading from their Bible on a schedule that rivals the strictest train timetable. Those sound like really good things, but you know what they are? They're knowledge. They don't equate to knowing. I would rather be the man that walks with God in faith than a man that can quote the whole Bible. I would rather be a man who knows his God than a man who knows every scrap of theology ever written in the world. Because theology doesn't save me. Knowing God does. I would rather be a man that can live on God's holy mountain than a man that has mapped the rules for being a Christian. Rules for being a Christian. This isn't in my sermon. Bonus time. When did we make rules for being a Christian? Who decided what the rules were? To my knowledge, there's one rule. God so loved the world that he gave his only son that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Isn't that the rule? So quit adding. I want to be a guy who knows God and lives with God, who walks with him. Psalm 15 says, Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain? The one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart, whose tongue utters no slander, who does no wrong to a neighbor, and casts no slur on others, who despises a vile person, but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps an oath even when it hurts, and does not change their mind, who lends money to the poor without interest, who does not accept a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things will never be shaken. That man walks with the Lord. He's not obligated to be with God. He's not sitting there looking at things going, I'm scared I'm going to go to hell, so I'm going to try and work out all the little notches and check off all the boxes to be a Christian. He's not doing that. This guy knows God. You have to acknowledge there is nothing specific in that text. He didn't have to bring 613 pieces of mustard to the temple and count them out onto the platter. He didn't have to be told that the tithe is 10%. He brings what he knows is God's and gives it back to him. He doesn't have to be told that there are certain ways you have to be civil to people. You guys remember when civility was like a basic, inalienable right in life? This is a bonus too. I don't know when civility became something that we had to achieve to. There were these little commercials on. They were like, honesty, do what's right. They were like, truth, do what's right. All this. And in one of them, they came up and said, civility, do what's right. And I'm like, how is civility something to attain to? When I was growing up, it was called the bottom standard. This guy knows. The man who walks on the holy hill, he knows what it is to be right with God. He knows what it is to do what's right with God. Not because there's a list who tells him that he has to, but because he knows God and he desires to be with God and he thanks God and he praises God and he loves God wildly. I want to be a guy who lives on the holy hill. I want to be a man who walks with him in that way. I want to be a guy who honors God for who God is and who desires to be in God, to know him. Psalm 15 is about a man who's giving more. He's giving more of himself to the things that are right by the Lord's being. More of his will is submitted to the Lord than to his own desires. More of his self comes to the more that God gives, as they do more than just live tangentially by obligation. But instead, they give more and walk together in a glorious symbiosis of giving thanks, being in praise, and love and selflessness. To paraphrase a prophet of some renown, the man of Psalm 15 is a man that has learned what it is to make Jesus more and make himself less. It's a man that has truly learned to walk faithfully with God and to please him in faith. I want to love God wildly. I'm still not good at it. You guys know I don't hide very well. There's times I'm still all about doing what I want to do. It's just how it works. But I will tell you this, there is in me a desire to be better. There is in me a desire to know God more. There is in me a desire to see my life, because of how deeply I am in Jesus, change other people's lives. And I hope today that you guys realize the only way to walk with God is to know him. There is no checklist, there is no law. Only to know him and to love him faithfully. Guys, we're at invitation time now. Because what I'm asking you guys to do today is I'm asking you to love him wholeheartedly. If there's something not right in you at the prayer, at time we stand up and we do our invitation, here's what I want you to pray. Just, Lord, take all my sin outside and let me be with you right now. If you don't know Jesus, we're happy to talk about him. Come on up front. Let's find out. If this is a church you want to be a part of, come up front. We're happy to talk about that too. But the truth of the matter is this. My overriding desire at this time of invitation is this. Examine yourself. See if you're loving God wildly, and if you're not, start with thanking him. Thank him with overflowing thanks. Praise him, and then know him. Would you stand as we